Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. We've already got people flowing into the unauthorized chat. I'm told audio and video are good in the D Live chat, and so we are good to go. It's kind of interesting. Now that John Delarose is streaming live to unauthorized, and then went into Owen's, and of course Owen's still going, but then went into mine, and it's pretty clear that if we wanted to, and we added two or three more people, we could practically stream around the clock if we could just find somebody to handle Asia. I'm not suggesting that that's a good thing, although we will be streaming around the clock once we get Castalia Classics finally going, as is our intention. But anyhow, it's good. It's good to see some new content, and of course, I'm going to be going on. I'm not going to be streaming on either tomorrow night or Thursday night because Owen's having John on, and I'm going to be going on John's Darkstream, which will also be streamed to here, unauthorized, so you can watch it on John's channel then if you're interested. And of course, we're going to be talking about a couple different things. As you're probably aware, for reasons that remain unknown, Larry Correa of Sad Puppies and Monster Hunter fame just went off on John for no reason at all. And then a number of his sycophants, like Brad Torgerson, followed suit. So that was kind of strange. But what it did reveal is that it's time for me to talk openly about the whole Sad Puppy situation, how rabid puppies evolved, why rabid puppies turned out to be more influential than sad puppies, and so forth. And so I think that that's going to be interesting, especially for those who were sad puppies and rabid puppies and were involved in it directly themselves. A number of folks that are active and valued members of the community actually first got involved with the community because of sad puppies. And then we're also going to talk about Comicsgate and how a complete failure to understand what Comicsgate even was on my part was what led to a bit of a minor kerfluffle and some conflict with Ethan Van Sciver and some other folks doing independent comics, much to my surprise. I mean, completely to my surprise. But, with the benefit of hindsight, it's become possible to understand what was going on, why it happened. Now it makes a lot more sense to me than it did at the time. At the time, I was completely mystified. But anyhow, I do have one thing to show you, which I'm very pleased to do before we get into the topic at hand. And that is, you can now see that Junior Classics Volume 7 and 8 are ready. We've got the cover designs done, and we are just waiting to have the proofreaders finish up, and we will be going to print. And so I'm very, very optimistic about getting both the hardcovers and the leather versions out well before Christmas. So the hardcovers, there's a decent chance for actually getting them out in October, and the leathers will probably be out, I would assume, in November, but that's a little bit out of our control. seeing these things does make me regret a little bit um, the way that if you look at volume 4 and volume 6, I think we should have used 3 lines on the title. I think Heroes of History on 8 looks better than the Heroes of Chivalry on 4. Um, we're probably going to go ahead and revise those at some point just so that we can at least new buyers and stuff will be able to have all those things line up flawlessly. Um, I was following initially. I was following the 1958 Junior Classics lead, which is why we had the two lines instead of 3 on volume 4. But looking at them all like that, it's like, okay, we need to do something about 4 and 6 at some point. Um, Aha approves of the otter. Hey, it's the animal book. I'm the editor. You know you're going to get otters. In fact, there may even be a story about otters in there. Nimmeister says, Lacey is the artist indeed. Um, we risked angering all the backers because we were not going to replace Lacey. I think now that the time has passed, that it's quite clear that we did the right thing there, and so I'm pretty happy about that. And let me see if I can show you I'll show you one of the, not both of them, just one. I have it. Yeah, so this is the cover of the whole cover of volume 7. Obviously the white lines, those are there for reference. They're not part of the cover, but and bonus points to anyone who understands the significance of the cover. You'll get it when you read the book. But I think Lacey just did a wonderful job. Especially if you compare it to the old animal book. Let me go grab that over here so you can see it for comparison. So this is the 1958 version. Wow, it does not like the green color, does it? Anyhow, see if yeah, you can't really see it because the color is all wrong for streaming. But anyhow, it's the images of a horse being rescued from a fire, but it's really kind of unclear, and the dark green color actually makes it hard to see. And then what they did for the covers, they just like cut out everything that didn't fit for and put it on the spine. And so I'm pretty pleased. I'm actually extremely pleased with the way that, it's called the animal book. It should have a bunch of animals on it, not a person and burning horses. I mean, come on. So anyhow, Junior Classics 7 and 8 are on, being produced. We're getting close. It's all good. So what do I mean by Germany threatens Russia? I mean literally the German foreign minister, who until the scandal of her college plagiarism came out, was the leader of the Green Party, who was actually favored to become the German prime minister after the last election. The scandal was enough to knock down the Green Party's vote. Scholz's party won. Scholz became the prime minister after doing what they call a stoplight, red-green socialist Green Party alliance that is the current ruling party in Germany, or the current ruling coalition in Germany. And so they made the mistake of giving this woman a post as the foreign minister. And she came out today and unbelievably said that parts of Russia were going to join the EU. And what she means by parts of Russia, of course, is that Ukraine, with NATO and the EU's help, is going to defeat Russia, take back the Donbass republics that have been formally incorporated into Russia, and take back the Crimea. Now, the fact that a German foreign minister doesn't stop to think of how it looks, declaring that Germany, the German-dominated EU, is going to take Russian territory and make it part of the Germanic Empire. I mean, this is absolutely outrageous. I can't even imagine how badly this has gone over with Russian audiences. You know, World War II, the events of World War II are more vivid to Russians than pretty much any other people in the world. More than the Jews, more than the Japanese. You know, the Russians lost something like 20 million people. Every single family was affected by it. You know, it was a much more traumatic experience for the Russians than it was for either the Americans, the British, or the French. Possibly not the Germans. The Germans not only suffered during the war, but incredibly afterwards. But Ladumba says she also said last year that she does not care about what her voters think about Ukraine. It is a priority. Yeah, she's obviously just doing what she's told. I mean, it's not possible for her to have an original thought in her head. But I disagree. Sam says the Russians are probably laughing hysterically. No, I don't think they are. I mean, I think that the level of cluelessness about the realities of the situation is funny. But I don't think that they find it funny at all that a German foreign minister, I mean, yes, granted, she's hardly von Ribbentrop, right? I mean, you talk about the degradation of the species. I mean, compare this woman to the Nazi prime minister back then. You know, it's just total nonsense. But the problem that this represents, and the reason that this is a matter of reasonable concern to everyone who lives in Europe, is that it indicates the total detachment from reality of the governing parties, of the governing politicians. You know, they're so far detached from reality that the chances that they're going to do anything reasonable, the chances that they're going to offer a pretty much unconditional surrender after Ukraine falls is not a given. Now, there is reason for optimism in the fact that the Slovaki people just elected a new government that has no interest in continuing support for Ukraine, has no interest in fighting Russia. And that's going to happen in other countries soon. You know, I thought it was very encouraging that the Swiss refused to go along with the EU in sanctioning China. I mean, it was total madness to sanction the Russians. but and it harmed a lot of business operations in Switzerland. But sanctioning China, which the EU has done and is doing, and what the US is doing, is going to absolutely destroy the European economies. You know, the Chinese haven't even begun to strike back and retaliate. You know, when they do, it's going to be ghastly. People have no idea how bad it could be if China just decides, oh, you're going to sanction us? Well, we're not going to deal with you anymore. And they're not going to have to, because it's very clear now that the rest of the world supports Russia, supports China. Nobody's supporting the West. Bruce Charlton appears to have hit the nail on the head with regards to why these idiots have been installed. Perhaps, but it is remarkable that the quality of national leader is so astonishingly low at this point. I mean, Biden doesn't have much more going on upstairs than a potato. You know, and that's not the usual, oh, you know, the whole the one liberal joke. You know that Republican president, he's really stupid. I mean, Biden literally can't talk. He can't walk. I mean, what he's being subjected to should probably be considered elder abuse. You know, Kamala Harris, you know, she literally can't talk without just bursting into this alarming wide-eyed cackle. I mean, they have to keep her away from microphones and off the cameras because she scares people. She's just so obviously, you know, I don't know if it was all the, you know, bacteria and viruses shared by Willie Brown or what, but you know, she is a lunatic. Some of you were a little bit alarmed by that. My apologies, but you know, but think about it, and then you look at Britain's being run by this Indian dwarf. Ireland's being run by a gay Indian. Germany's got this, like, you know, sorority girl who obviously doesn't know the first thing about history. You know, I mean, the whole thing is just, I mean, they needed, in order to get these people to do what they want them to do, they needed people who are functional retards at best. Just because what they're doing is so obviously destructive to themselves. You know, your average person, you know, I mean, if you could take your average gangbanging 80 IQ thug, and they've got, you know, more self-preservation instincts than any of these politicians. I mean, you know, let's go after, first let's try a land war against Russia, and while we're losing it, let's start economically sanctioning the company, or the one country that is keeping our debt afloat. You know, I don't think you can reasonably or rationally argue that, oh, well, they're just misguided. You know, those those darn Democrats. If if we didn't have those darn Democrats in charge, you know, doing those, being all misguided and stuff, you know, we could actually bring the country together and fix things. You know, you don't fix Russia. You don't fix China. It's not 1939 anymore. You know, Napoleon said, "Don't wake the sleeping dragon." Napoleon understood even back then, you don't want to mess with China. You know, China was more powerful than the Roman Empire. Fortunately, they were very internally focused. No interest in ruling over anybody else. I mean, not only no interest in ruling over anybody else, no interest in anybody else, period. And when they talk about the Middle Kingdom, do you know what the Middle Kingdom meant? It didn't refer to geography. It meant halfway between the earth and heaven. That's how little interest they had in everything else. Yeah. I mean, the big question is, so whose votes will actually be less intelligent? The corpse of Dianne Feinstein or this black lesbian from Maryland who's just been appointed senator from California? I mean, I didn't even know that you could be appointed senator from one state if you lived in a different one. You know, I mean, I knew that there are carpetbaggers and stuff all the time. I mean, I think since like 1988 or so, Minnesota has had a New York Jew as a senator regularly. But at least they went to the trouble of moving to Minnesota, you know, after college, or in some cases even in their youth. You know, so they might still talk like a New Yorker and think and act like a New Yorker, but at least they had lived in Minnesota, right? Chad points out China built the largest naval fleet in the world and then burned it all down. Because, you know what? Nah. Nah. So, anyhow, yeah. It was interesting that Newsom did keep his promise to nominate a black woman to the Senate. You know, Newsom being, you know, obviously narcissistic, it surprised me that he didn't do one of those things where he nominates himself. I remember there were one or two governors back, I don't know, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, that were in a similar position. And in one case, at least one case, I remember the guy nominated himself to the Senate, named himself to the Senate, and then lost because people were so mad at him. You know, so anyhow, go figure. I'm just disappointed that Newsom didn't nominate Meghan Markle. That would have been funny. I would have absolutely enjoyed that. Oh, did Dick Cheney do that? Wow. Shame on the people from Montana. I mean, not only electing him both governor and senator, but like letting him do that. I mean, I think that Meghan Markle in the Senate might have actually been funnier than the Biden or than the Obama administration. I mean, the one thing that you absolutely have to say about the Obama administration is that it was a lot of fun. I mean, just all. I mean, and Obama's the ex-president that keeps on giving. I mean, the whole thing about how he keeps he keeps losing. His chefs. They keep finding his dead naked chefs. I mean, you know, and then the letter comes out about him fantasizing about having sex with men. Internet Predator is a little bit dismayed. He says, "Fun? Yes, the Obama administration was funny. There was always. I mean, come on, look it up. And the 57 states of America. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that Obama was stoned more than 75% of the time. You know, I mean, and then of course the whole thing where it's become practically common knowledge that Michelle is actually Michael. Um, I mean, even people that pay no attention to politics and are not given to paying any attention to conspiracy theory um, are aware of that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I buy the whole Joan Rivers being uh, killed for that. I mean, um, maybe. I mean, you know, if you're one of their creatures, then you have to follow the rules. And given her long and successful attachment to Hollywood, uh, and given some of the, her husband's suicide and all that kind of stuff, it's probable that she was a ticket taker. And if she was, then she definitely was not supposed to be talking about things like that. So it's possible. But now, like, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, practically everybody knows about it, jokes about it, etc., etc. Right? I mean, it doesn't, and of course, now it doesn't matter because what are they going to do? Unelect him? You know? Yeah, I mean, the thing is, clown world is just getting more and more absurd and more clownish. And yes, these things are a concern. These things are indicative of evil in the world and the rise of evil in the world, the fact that the dark is rising and all that. But we can laugh while we fight. You know, our enemies are absurd. There's a reason why we call it clown world. We don't call it clown world because, well, they're such genius masterminds and we have so much respect for what they. We call them clown worlds because they're obviously fucking clowns. Yes, sinister. Clowns are sinister, in my opinion. But they are absurd. THX points out once something has served its purpose, they really have no incentive to protect that thing or person. No, never forget, evil hates its servants. Evil despises its servants. And to bring it back to what we were talking about with regards to the John Delarose thing and stuff, look at what Hans Schantz wrote about today on his blog. It's linked on my blog. You can see it. You can tell an awful lot about people, about what their heart is, about who they actually are, by how they treat those who are on their side, how they treat those who help them, who are their fans, etc., etc., etc. It was interesting because I got an email, you know, from some random person I've never heard of before, and he says, "Hey Vox, I thought I'd add my 2 cents regarding the character of John Delarose. When I reached out to him on Gab as a complete nobody writer in 2017, he gave me an excellent blurb for my book in a couple of weeks, despite his presumably busy schedule. Afterwards, he took the time to follow up on the release, and when he found out that I hadn't sold any copies yet, he posted in a bunch of private groups to try to drum up some sales for me. Great guy, and I'll never forget his help." Now, what is wrong with you that you would refer to somebody who does that, who goes way above and beyond whatever they're owed, some nobody stranger who happens to contact them on social media? How is that being a vile cancer? Right? I was actually a little bit shamed when I read that piece by Hans Schantz. And you know why? Because I haven't always supported that based book thing. And I didn't realize it was that important to those beginning and whatever you want to call them. I don't want to use the word. Let's say those less established writers. I didn't realize that it was that important to them and that beneficial to them. I also didn't take, Castelia didn't take part in it. A lot of other small publishers, Silver Empire, Superversive, etc., they were taking part in it. Castelia should have been taking part in it. But we don't think much about Amazon. We don't think about Amazon at all because we don't, really sell that many books through there. And so I was just like, I don't want to mess around with dealing with the price changes and this, that, and the other thing. And so, once I read that and, I understood what John and what some of these other more established writers were doing for the others, I thought, this is ridiculous. How are we not, here we're trying to help people on the right out, and we're not doing as much as we could, as much as we easily could, as much as others are actively doing. And that's why I think that it's particularly shameful and obnoxious, for this Bain ankle biters brigade to be attacking people who have clear bona fides, in many cases better bona fides than they do, for the work that they do on behalf of and for people on the cultural right. So anyhow, that's about all I have today. There's not too much more to discuss. I don't think that not only do I not think that the German threat is serious, I think that it is only serious in that it indicates, number one, how detached from reality the current European governments are, and number two, the fact that the Russians may have to defeat NATO and perhaps actually occupy a few European nations before the NATO governments come to their senses. I don't believe that will be necessary, I because I think that just as the Slovak people have elected a relatively pro-Russian government, I think you're going to see the same thing elsewhere. Especially, like for example, you know, the Swiss are already. Oh, here's the interesting thing about the Swiss decision to not adopt the sanctions is they kept it really quiet. They didn't want a big public discussion in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, or whatever they call it, the lower house of Parliament. Um, they didn't want a discussion in the Parliament or in the Senate because they didn't want people realizing how crazy the EU governments are. You know, I mean, the EU governments don't have the ability, they literally don't have the ability to resist an invasion from unarmed people coming across the ocean from Africa. Uh, you know, what are they going? They're going to discipline China. They're going to discipline Russia. There's no chance, none whatsoever. Yeah, look at Sweden. Um, so anyhow, you know, one of the things you might want to consider adding to your prayer list, your wish list, whatever you want to call it, is sanity in government. Not not even ideology, just sanity and a basic level of self-preservation. Because right now we don't have it. What political steps will Germany go through in the next few years? AFD, Russian occupation. I think that what's going to happen is that the AFD is going to grow and come to power. All of the groups, the Sweden Democrats, the People's Party, um, the La Liga in Italy, all of those um, political parties were total non-entities 10 years ago. Totally unelectable. Every other party said, we'll never work with them, we'll never go into coalition with them. And yet we're already seeing it happen. Now, obviously, there's betrayals like and corruption, like Meloni in Italy talked a good game until she became prime minister, and then, for reasons unknown, um, you know, suddenly turned around, did a 180, and uh, embraced immigration. Um, but politicians like that aren't going to last. You know, the fat and happy days are over. The hard times are coming. Ladumba says Sweden Democrats are one or two terror attacks from becoming the biggest party. Exactly, because reality is going to bite sooner or later. And that's when, and the parties whose platforms and policies are actually at least somewhat cognizant of and in line with reality are going to become the popular parties. Is it true that the European mind cannot comprehend the beauty of a 20-lane highway? Yes, 100%. When will St. Breivik come to play? I think St. Breivik is very, very close to manifesting in a number of countries. I would expect, and we've already seen what happened in Sweden. A girl was raped. I suspect that her boyfriend might not be Swedish. He might be an immigrant himself, but her boyfriend and his brothers hung the rapist, hanged him. And in the U.S., we've just seen some YouTuber who was annoying somebody, harassing somebody in a mall, got shot, and the guy was not convicted correctly, in my opinion. Um, at least of the serious charge. Um, but I think that the countries where you're going to see things happening is probably Spain and France. The situation there is really incendiary, and it's just a matter of the wrong uh, the wrong people being victimized, and the authorities are not going to be able to keep a lid on it. So, um, but the whole West, because of mass immigration, the whole West is now a powder keg. The U.S. obviously is. You know, all throughout Europe. About the only places that really aren't are like Hungary, where they weren't letting them in. But even there, 168 border guards have been injured fighting to keep the invaders out. Literally fighting. Gunfire, automatic weapons. It really is an invasion. So, but conflict is in the air we breathe. It is the air we breathe. It's the water in which we swim. This is these are the times that are interesting. These are the times that make for the history books. So in some ways we're privileged to get to experience it. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.